Welcome to Future Foodcast. I'm Pam Line-Miller, your host. Have you ever wondered if there are people out there doing our thinking for us? Like thinking about solutions to the bigger problems that we have in the world? Well, we have a guest with us today who is heading up a think tank just like that. And I can't wait to jump into what they're doing. We have Gus Guadagnini with us. He is the CEO of GFI Brazil. Welcome to the show, Gus.
Thank you, Pam. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here. Can you tell us what GFI Brazil is? Because I bet a lot of our audience does not know, or they might actually.
Yes. Well, if they didn't know, they're going to know now. And I'm very excited to tell more about GFI. GFI stands for the Good Food Institute. We are a non-profit think tank trying to develop the alternative protein sector as a climate and food security solution for the future. So we are thinking on how to solve our main problems connected to the food production system and trying on how to diversify, thinking on how to diversify the sources of protein that we eat right now.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you're a think tank and you're looking across the industry, because here on Future Foodcast, we have talked to alternative protein companies that are very focused on their niche in the market, but you really have a broader view and you partner with not just companies, but also governments and other entities, right?
Exactly. So GFI is an affiliate network, right? We are spread around the globe in United States, Brazil, India, Israel, Europe, and Asia Pacific. And we also have a strategic partner in China to work in there. And GFI is working in the alternative protein sector. So this means that now we support three different kinds of technologies, three technology branches. There are the plant-based sector, this one that we know quite a lot, that is in the supermarkets, the burgers that taste like meat but are actually made by plants. We also support the fermentation sector, so people that are using these microorganisms to produce protein, to produce meat as well. And we also support the cultivated meat sector. So it's a more look like sci-fi, and it's the technology of getting a cell from an animal, reproducing this cell in a factory, and making meat starting on the cell. So making meat from the cell reproduction.
Yeah, interesting about those three sectors. And I want to dive into what you see happening in those. But first of all, help me understand, because I hear Brazil and I think about beef and meat. I mean, you're synonymous with that. You go together in my mind. I'm an American, and we have Brazilian steakhouses, and they're some of the best steakhouses that we have. So help me understand what's happening in Brazil, where you're working on protein alternatives.
Yes. It's nice that you think about Brazil like this. And what I want is that Brazil will keep its leadership in the meat industry by investing on these new technologies that are also going to produce new sources of meat, this protein diversification that I was talking about. And in GFI, we consider our theory of change in general is that we are starting a problem. The problem is all the impacts that are being caused by the meat production and the food production in general. So we are talking about food is a sector that produces 1/3 of all global emissions, while it receives only 3% of the climate investment to solve these problems. So we need to look more for the food sector, and we need to understand how food impacts the production, impacts clean water, land use, food security, of course. And there's a number of metrics now that are being challenged by the current methods of production. And what we believe is that we need to diversification. We need to show new ways of producing the same kind of meat that people already love. So if you love eating a burger and you grill your burger, then you have a plant-based burger that tastes just the same. You are going to grill just the same, and you're going to eat and serve your family just the same, but you are making these ingredients with 95% less impact on the world. So it's the idea that the technology can help us solve part of our environmental footprint that we have related to food. And it's interesting, when you connect this about Brazil, is that Brazil loves meat. So it's the perfect place for something that tastes like meat and looks like meat, and it's sold in the same meat market. It's the same scientists, the same kind of factory, the same distribution, logistics systems. So Brazil has all it takes to become a leader on alternative protein. And I think this is happening in a certain way.
Yeah, this is one of the big challenges I think that you're talking about addressing is consumers, because we don't want to make changes. Sometimes when you talk to meat eaters, and I am one, and you talk about alternative protein sources, we are normally resistant to change. So the fact that you're like, we're the perfect place to try this out because we love meat. I think that's a great approach, a great attitude towards that. And certainly the fastest path to gaining adoption is to help the consumer not have to change too much. And then that maybe they can see what the benefits might be of the sourcing of the products that they're consuming. And certainly taste is key. It has to taste good and taste similar, if not identical, to meat, and solving some of those problems, which I know is what you work on. You're partnering and affiliating with all different organizations to work on these problems.
Yeah, so the part of our idea is exactly thinking that we need to bring some change without actually changing all the culture and habits of people. So when you think about food, food is one of the most cultural things that exist. We are connected to our friends, our family through our food habits, our food traditions. Our food habits tell about who we are. You mentioned about Brazil and barbecue, and that's true. The barbecue is a symbol of Brazil, and it's something that we should respect and we should preserve as part of our cultural heritage. So what we want here is to just add a different source of ingredients. Instead of asking people to change their diets, to become vegan, or to stop eating meat, we are just offering another solution that is also delicious, that can be added to your food patterns very easily with no big change happening, and it's much more sustainable. So you can keep eating what you already love, and now you have new options of this is also possible to eat, and it's also delicious, and it's also something that I can buy for my family, healthy, nutritious. So that's the idea.
Yeah, and I like it that it's an and rather than an or, that this is in addition to the sources that we already have, because as you said, I mean, we need to be able to keep feeding all the people, and protein is an important part of our diets. So that's really important. So you work with scientists as well on some of these solutions?
Exactly. We have three programmatic areas inside GFI now. One of them is science and technology. And the idea for this is that the products are not there yet. We love the products that are being sold, and I 100% encourage people to try them. But also, part of the moment that we are as a market is that we need people to be part of the solution. We need people to build whatever is what we actually want to eat. And our market is still very under construction, it's in these early stages. So there's a lot of science that needs to happen so we can deliver the products that taste the same or better, and cost the same or less, and are as much nutritional or even better. And that's why we work with science. And one of the main tools that we have working with science is science grants. We need to get to fundraise to get more money for science. As I mentioned today, we only get 3% of the whole environmental investment. And we need more money in scientific development so products can become better, can become cheaper, and can become more available and more nutritious. And besides science, we also work with corporations engaging them. We are not a consultancy company, but we make consumer researches. We understand white spaces that the industries have to work. We create startup manual guides to support the entrepreneurs that are entering the space. So we have frameworks for investors to look at companies also. So like everything that relates to bringing more private investment to the sector as well. Not only governments will invest in this, but also corporations and investors, etc. And finally, we have a policy area that is dealing with the governments. So to sell some of these products, as I mentioned, we are thinking on making meat from cells. So that's something that still needs to be approved by the FDA, by the European Food Safety Authority, by Anvisa in Brazil. So there's lots of work to happen in the governments on the regulatory side, but also on bringing governments to invest in the sector. So both things happen. And finally, I think within the policy area, but I consider almost as a separate thing. There's the whole multilateral discussion. The discussions that are happening in the United Nations, in COP, the conference that is the climate conference from the United Nations, and the World Health Organization. So we have all these organizations that are global, Codex Alimentarius, for example, and they need to discuss, to understand alternative protein, and to debate on how much alternative protein can be part, especially of the climate solution and the steps that we need to make sure that everyone will have something to eat in the future in a sustainable way of producing this food.
We definitely want that. Now, you're not only involved with those organizations, you're hosting a couple of big conferences coming up in Brazil. So what are those coming up so our audience knows?
Yeah, so GFI is part of this. Now, these conferences are in Brazil because Brazil as a country is the host. So first we are in G20. G20 is happening this year, and it's super important because it's the 20 richest economies of the world. They are also the ones that drive the problem. We are, of course, part of the solution, but also when you think who is actually releasing the gases, who is using the land, who is using the water, the resources, it is the richer economies. So the richer economies have a role that it goes beyond just the possibility of being part of the solution, but there's a responsibility of being part of the solution. These countries are the countries that are creating the problem in a certain way. So these are the countries that also have the necessary resources to invest and create these solutions. So we believe the discussions happening in G20 are super important, and also COP. So COP30 is coming to Brazil next year. This year, COP is going to be in Azerbaijan. And next year, COP is going to be in Brazil, in the Amazon forest. So it's the perfect moment for us to discuss food production, right? We are going to be in the Amazon forest with the whole globe reunited to discuss forest preservation, to discuss climate preservation. And it's the perfect moment for us to discuss about food production and which are the solutions of food production that we can invest on to develop the sort of production chain that we need.
Right. And try to discern. I mean, there's a lot of possible solutions out there, and trying to, I think, figure out what direction to go in, like what's going to be the best, or do we do a combination of these things? And, just making all those big decisions. I think that's really great that you're hosting a couple of those big conferences to have the conversations. That's what needs to happen. We need to have the conversations and be able to identify what it is we're even talking about, what the variables are, what the analytics are, and make some informed decisions. So that's very exciting. I didn't know Brazil was that heavily involved. I mean, hosting is a big deal. So we talked about grants, and you do that to get the science going. But you're also working with government, like you said. I mean, for example, the Brazilian government and the FDA are going to have to approve some of these solutions that are being investigated and worked on before they can actually be commercialized.
Yes, that's true. We work with the governments, for example, in Brazil. Part of our work is giving the technical support that the governments need to make the regulatory process. So in Brazil, we went with a group of organizations that are working in this sector and requested the government to regulate the sector, to create the rules so we can sell the products. And part of the request that they made back was exactly to have food safety studies, hazard analysis, risk analysis. So there's a regulatory impact studies that needs to happen. So if we have a think tank, something that is not necessarily a private company, because private companies also have their own interests, and the government will take their words to a certain level. So as a nonprofit, we can be the ones making the science that is necessary to regulate the products. So we have the food safety studies, we had all of these studies that are important, and we deliver them, and the government, of course, makes its own decisions. So they will look at these studies, they will look to other information that is available, they request information from the companies, and they will make the final decisions on the regulatory. But we are a part of this agenda.
Well, and that's great, because then you get unbiased information is really what you're talking about, is as a think tank, not affiliated or not owned by a certain company who has certain profit motives or
Yes.
product motives for having maybe possible certain outcomes, you can be agnostic about that and have present just the detail of the data. So that's fabulous.
Of course, like I am not at all villainizing companies, but they have a driver that is their own profit, and they will make things, their investments to increase their profits, which is their mission, right? So you need philanthropy, you need nonprofits, you need the government to also think of this in a more broad way of how we can create the most impactful social impacts from this new production chain. How this is going to be more sustainable, how this will be better for consumers in the nutrition way. So the governments, philanthropies, and nonprofits, they think in other aspects that are not just the business aspects of the area, but also how this will impact livelihoods, health of people. So it's very important to have more philanthropic investments and more government investments to make this research and to make these decisions that are better for everyone and not only for the market itself, for the commercial part of the market.
That's a great point. Thank you for making that. I think, having that broader set of data points to consider is really important instead of just that narrow focus. So that allows that to happen. Thanks for bringing that out. I appreciate it. Well, what's the status right now? I mean, you were saying the products aren't quite ready. Like, we're still working on a lot. I mean, there are products out on the market that are alternative protein sources that have been very successful. But there are others, I guess, that are much earlier on and aren't quite to the viable stage.
Yeah. I think I like to compare this market in a certain way with the electric vehicles.
Okay.
We are somehow the electric vehicles of food. and the comparison is interesting because if you think about how to solve the emissions caused by cars, there's a kind of easy solution that will be done to use cars, right? You can ride your bike to work, you can ride a bus to work, and but for years, we made these campaigns and just didn't work. People want to go to work with their cars. They want to be in their private space. And there is a cultural habit connected to this that's very hard to change. So now we are thinking of course, this part of campaigning to people needs to keep happening. But there is a new part of let's deliver better cars, that have less emissions and they have better technology. So then the EVs come up as a solution that if you want to go to work with your own car, that's okay. But buy an electric car and you will not be causing emissions from this car. From food, we have the same situation. We love meat, we are eating meat, but meat has a lot of impacts and heavy impacts on the environmental and discussion in general. And then there's an easy solution that everyone could go vegan. Everyone could just reduce their meat consumption, eat more beans. And that's, in theory, it would be the easiest solution. But we are complaining about this for decades now, and people are not eating less meat. Quite on the contrary, they're expecting to eat more and more meat as the income grows, and then cultural changes also in Asia. So like people want more meat. And
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I didn't realize it was going in the opposite direction.
Like how I can deliver this meat that people want in a more sustainable way. And then we change the technology that produces the food and not necessarily the habits of people that are eating. And when we compare these two technologies, I feel that now we are the EVs a few decades ago when the cars were 3 times more expensive than a combustion car. The cars needed like 12 hours of charging and they had like 100 miles of autonomy. So it's like the cars were not there yet. And so everyone that was buying was much more someone that was making a rational decision of supporting the environment rather than the product is ready for people. And we see that now the cars are better. They are still a little more expensive. They have their problems with autonomy yet, but it's good enough to become a large portion of the car sales in the world. And I feel that in alternative proteins, that's the jump that we need to go. When we look at the products, we have great products in the market, but they are not there yet on all the aspects of meat. If you think on meat, let's say in Brazil, people love to eat feijoada. Feijoada is a dish of sausages that are put inside beans. So it's wet, it's a broth. And if you get a plant-based sausage and you put in the beans, it probably will break, it will dissolve, it will not keep the firm texture. So when think about food, we are not only thinking about the taste when I eat my burger, but in 100 ways that I cook my meals, that I cook meat, that I use the animal products, more than 100 probably. So like we as an alternative protein sector are not being able to deliver the full experience of meat yet. And the products cost more expensive. So we are very intense on these moments, like the products that we have now, I consider them to be early stage. Some are better, some are not so good, but it's an early stage market. And with heavy investment of science and technology, with heavy investments of the private sector in the companies, we are going to create new generations of these products that meet consumer demands, that cost the same or less, and that deliver the products that are, better or even at least similar to the ones that we have in meat. And I feel that there's a challenge that will happen in the short term. On plant-based products, we have maybe in the next 5 years, probably the products are going to be much better. If we consider the last 5 years and how we got the products to now, and thinking on the next ones, I think we have a very interesting forecast on product quality. While fermentation and cultivated, they are starting right now. So fermentation is pretty much like plant-based. In the end, you are going to use like a fungi base to make a protein, and you're going to make a product that looks like a plant-based product. But cultivated meat is just starting. So probably we are going to see the first products coming to market in the next 5 years or so. So I would say 5 years from now, the plant-based market will be in a much higher scale with better products and fermentation included in the products. But cultivated will probably be in an earlier stage of, the first companies got to the market, they are selling, they have their first factories open, and we are having like maybe the first generation of products actually selling everywhere on cultivated meat. So different stages because different technologies.
Yeah, and it's exciting that the technology is moving forward, and the scientists and the entrepreneurs are acting on that and finding solutions and figuring that out. So I love your positive attitude when you use the word yet. They're not ready yet, but the anticipation is that they will be, and it might not be in the current form, but it's going to be in some iteration of the current form as we move along the discovery process. Oh, that's very exciting, Gus. I mean, thank you for bringing all that to us. GFI is involved in so many different areas of this particular piece of the industry. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience before we go?
Yes, I'd like to first invite people to connect to the alternative protein sector. Recently, this year in 2024, the World Bank released a report that's called Recipe for a Livable Planet, and they listed alternative proteins as a climate solution as the second most impactful climate solution for the world right now, just behind reforestation. So it is one of the most important things that need to happen in our time, in our life, and there's a lot of space. These last comments that you made about this is not there yet, that's exactly how it thinks. So everyone that is working with innovation, everyone that is working in the food sector, everyone that is working is a scientist or working in the government, these people can work with alternative protein. There is impact. There is the need for all these talented people to come to work in the sector. There is the need for more funding also if someone can collaborate with this. And so my invitation is in this sector. Alternative protein is one of the most important things happening right now. And I feel that everyone that can collaborate should come to the sector, should try to engage in alternative protein sector.
We love that collaboration word, Gus. I think that's really important for the food industry moving forward in a lot of different areas. So thanks for bringing that point, and thank you for being with us and sharing from your expertise.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and for everyone that is listening to us right now. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. Absolutely. And our audience, please subscribe. Let us know what comments and questions you have. And if you are a regular listener, you'll know that we are interviewing alternative meat companies and previewing some different products that are being investigated. And we look forward to you taking a look at those shows as well. Until next time, I'm Pam Line-Miller.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.